Starting. Oh,
I put my name on.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I'm really excited. This is our first PRLab Logic event. Obviously, it's our first digital event because we haven't had anything like this before. So we're just testing it out, seeing how it's going to run. But tonight we have a few lovely guests here. We have Victoria Taylo, who is our president of client service for PRLab. We have Brittany Bang, representative from Audrey's Rescue Angels, which is one of our clients. And we have Dennehy from Dennehy PR. And I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves just very briefly. If you were able to see any of their bios that are on our website or on Twitter or on Facebook, that's awesome. But if they just want to give a little background on how they started out in PR. So Tori, we'll start with you. We'll go to Brittany, and then Julie, you can share with us a little bit about your PR experience. So
sounds good.
In PRLab as an account executive for a local museum, and continued on in the next semester as a supervisor, where I led a team of 4 on BU's School of Marketing, the 100-year anniversary, and then brought me to president of client service now, where I oversee our wonderful 25 clients and around 80 students.
Awesome. Wow, I didn't know that. That's very impressive.
25 students, that's great.
That's quite an impressive roster. Well, hey everyone, I'm Brittany Bang. I am the president and founder of an animal welfare nonprofit called Audrey's Rescue Angels. I've been doing that particular organization now for almost 2 years, and I've always been slightly in the communications marketing. I was a communications major in college, what seems like eons ago, but so I've always kind of been in the field, but it's really nice to be able to be a client of PRLab. I've been a client with PRLab for 4 semesters now, so it's just a great experience. So I like to have both being the client and having the knowledge of the PR and communications and marketing industry in general. So
awesome, thank you. And Julie, how about you?
Well, let's see. I am Julie Dennehy. I'm an accredited public relations consultant. I've worked at a Boston agency for 7 years, so did the downtown Boston thing for a long time, and then started my own firm in 1996. So I've been out on my own working with global brands as well as small local clients and enjoying every minute of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. It's great to have all 3 perspectives, both the student, the client, and then just an outside perspective on we're going to talk tonight about student-run agencies and how client service runs from each of those perspectives. So it's great to have you guys here. Since we're doing the digital thing, I have the questions on my phone here. So Tori, we'll start with you. What has been, I guess this is a loaded first question, but what has been your biggest challenge in terms of keeping a client happy, and how did you handle any difficult situations with clients?
Okay.
and don't look at me, Tori.
Don't look at me. In the past, we had a client who was experiencing some difficulties with a supervisor and their ability to manage the team, and it started to really affect the entire team, their productivity, and honestly their confidence to work with this client. And handling that took a lot of patience, also many conversations, both with the client, sort of managing their expectations, because we are student run. Everyone kind of has different learning curves and are different points in their careers and study. And then also with the team, kind of rebuilding their foundation and the way they work together and collaborate on things. And ultimately, it was a process of give and take, but it was great. The rest of the semester, we were able to get back on our feet, and the client did ask to come back the following semester. So,
that's great. See, that's a good resolution. This next question is for both Brittany and Julie, just in terms of being on the other side of that, not being the student or doing any of the service, but being the client. So do you have any tips for agencies, student-run specifically, to execute excellent client service, to be able to communicate with clients in a way that even when there are difficult situations like Tori's expressed going on, how to deal with that the most effectively? Brittany, you can go ahead and answer that first if you have something for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing, and this is something, is just really setting clear expectations. I think sometimes, especially when you are a client and you don't have a lot of PR knowledge, which so many of the clients don't have, coming up with a game plan can be a big idea. And they just say, oh, I want to get media exposure. Well, really, as the client, you need to understand that this is a student-run organization, and to really break down your expectations and really giving more clear, defined goals. You know, I would like to see my company featured in one publication. You know, really setting more tangible goals and starting off not small, because you don't want to limit yourself or the students' potential, but really just kind of setting clear goals and really doing them one by one, rather than just really going out of the gate with just huge ideas. It's really kind of more boiling it down and narrowing it in.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie, before you answer, it seems like we're having some technical difficulties, so I'm just going to check and see if we have sound, because we can hear you, but if who's watching outside cannot. So let me just check the mic. Looks like it should be all set. But
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you. We can hear you. We just want to make sure everyone listening at home can hear you. Alrighty. We are all set. We're back in action. Hello.
Are comments enabled for this Hangout? Are comments enabled?
So the comments that are coming in are going to be via Twitter with the hashtag PRLab Logic. So I'm kind of feeding those right now in between you guys answering questions. So
Okay.
come over via Twitter.
I'll jump on there too.
Awesome. But just that question, did you need me to repeat the question, or are you all set?
Yeah, if you don't mind, that would be great.
Yeah, so do you have any tips for agency student run specifically of how to execute client service in the most effective way possible?
Okay. So in addition, Brittany had some really good points, so I won't repeat them, but I think that there's a few basics. I think what student-run agencies do really well is they're very organized, they're extremely process-driven, they have great mentoring through your professors. So I don't think that is usually a problem. I think usually it's some of the basics like listening, you know, based on what Brittany just said, listening to some of the, you know, what would be a home run, you know, asking questions that allow the student-run agency to know what the client really wants. Because they might say, for example, I want publicity, but you don't ask what kind of publicity or specifically what media outlets you want. So to really dig down a little bit, drill down a little bit, and find out what would be a home run for the client, because sometimes we forget to say that. And to do a lot of listening. The only, you know, issue is sometimes everyone's pressed for time, because I know it's hard for student agencies to get the account team in one place and to focus on a client meeting. So that time is really precious. It's not like a regular agency where if the client calls, everyone kind of figures out how to be available. So in the short time that you have, you want to make the most of it to really listen and take notes, and even pare it back in a very quick email right after the meeting. Here's what we talked about today, and here's what we're going to do, and just to sort of pare it back what the meeting entails, because that's super important, especially when everyone's moving quickly. And my last point would be enthusiasm, like to show, I know everyone's tired sometimes, and you know, maybe it's not, the client is not the industry or the topic that you're interested in personally, but the critique I hear a lot from my colleagues is that they're not even interested in what I'm doing. Because when you're a larger agency, you can pick it and choose people from a team, for a team that knows, you know, about healthcare or about consumer tech. And in this case, you guys are who you are, and you have to make sure that you show passion and enthusiasm for their topic, their subject, their industry, their event, whatever it is. So I know it's hard when it's not something you're interested in, but you know, you got to put on a game face. So
yeah, that's a great lead into kind of the next thought that we had. So Tori, in terms of the lessons that you're learning from your clients and from students, how have you developed in your role through PRLab? So I know you started out as an account executive, you've worked your way up, you've learned some of these valuable lessons that Julie and Brittany were talking about. What are some of those that you found that have helped you the most coming up to be the president that you are today?
Well, from a student perspective, I guess the most important lessons I've learned is just to always take advantage of opportunities. College and student-run agencies in particular present so many opportunities. It's just a matter of recognizing those and actually taking them and being aggressive about it. Mm-hmm. You have to be. And also just learning at every chance you can get, whether that's from internships, classes, or your peers, and whether you're learning on your own or from class. You should just always be learning and adding to your knowledge and your skills.
Mm-hmm. And then for Brittany, kind of building off of that, what have you learned from the students that you've been able to work with in your time with PRLab? Because I know you've been on with us for a couple semesters now, so how has that transition between, changing over teams at the end of every semester, how has that been for you, and how has that maybe helped your business either grow or develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important. I think that one of the biggest challenges, which actually helps me in the long run, is changing over teams.
So that's a good thing.
It started off as a hard thing because,
mm-hmm.
again, just as I was talking about, especially since we were a new organization and I was new with PRLab, we were coming up with kind of lofty, long, bigger goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was tough to get in a rhythm. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is, again, setting those kind of clear, defined goals that are not short term, but have building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And every semester, what we've done is we've started something, and then every semester we've built.
Right.
So it's just been really a great opportunity to take students and really the best part about what we're doing here is they're bringing in so many new skill sets. Every single semester, there are just amazing new skills. It's such a rapidly changing industry that it's, I'm not aging myself, but I've always joked that I was a communications major in college, and there was no such thing as Facebook. There was no such thing as Twitter.
Right.
So it's amazing now. I can't imagine going through communications and not learning about those social media tools. I mean, we would never do anything like this.
Right.
So the students just have such a great pulse on what is new and what is relevant. So I think as a client, taking what those students know and taking what the new is, cutting edge is, and really having it be a very reciprocal relationship. I've always said I want to learn just as much as the students here as they learn from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to be a great symbiotic relationship. So learning what they have, changing the new semesters, really learning that, we get clear defined goals, and then really just, kind of realizing that, they do some great stuff, so.
And then for Julie, I guess, so you're running your own agency. How has, how has that shaped your experience, and what lessons have you learned running an agency, regardless of whether it's with, you have students helping out as interns or just your regular employees? How is that for you?
I think it's been a great experience. It's been extremely, it's an energetic, experience for me because I'm an independent practitioner. So it's great to have some new ideas, some new energy. I second everything Brittany said. I think it's great to have a team of students who have new skills with not a lot of barriers to learning new things. Even if they're not using Pinterest, for example, and I say we're going to create a Pinterest board, they're like, okay, great, we're on it. We'll figure it out. They might not be, if that particular student's not an expert, they know someone who is. So I enjoy that part of it. I don't want to, repeat anything Brittany said. It was right on the money. But I like the energy and the enthusiasm toward learning new things. I've had interns for 20 years, and this to me is a logical extension of an internship where I get a room full of great students instead of just one. So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I know sometimes we talk about in class, just the experience of being a student taking a class like this. Sometimes you don't have a lot of experience before this class in public relations, and it's great to hear that clients like yourselves and professionals like yourself are appreciating the work that students are able to do here and really valuing the new ideas and the new things that are coming up in this space. So we really enjoy doing work that maybe is not necessarily for the biggest client, but it's making a big impact. And yeah, so that's great to hear. Thank you for that. So Tori, throughout your experience, like you said, we've been through the ranks here. What do you think makes PRLab so successful in what we do? We have clients like Brittany coming back. We have, you know, people like Julie supporting us even from the outside. What do you think makes that so special?
So I would absolutely say the students, and you know, we are student run, and their ability to take what they learn from the class portion and apply that to real life situations and be able to deliver real results for clients is absolutely what makes it so successful. And not only do they do that, but they contribute to the success of our agency.
And then let's see here. I'm just checking the Twitter, going back and forth. Brittany, is there anything that stood out to you in your time with PRLab that has really made it to that? I know you said why you like to come back every semester, but is there any, oh, you okay over there, Julie?
Yeah, oh, I just ripped a piece of paper off. That must have sounded weird, huh?
A little bit different.
My notes.
Anything that students have been able to do for you, like any specific experiences that you had with students that really stood out to you and really moved your business forward? I know you were generalizing before saying, you know, the new ideas and the new, is there anything that you could feed off of what Tori said that has made it really special?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that I've seen, again, we were a new organization, so we had nowhere to go but up. So, but I think one of the biggest things is that real go-get-em attitude. So we had absolutely, being a nonprofit organization, we obviously don't have a brick and mortar, we don't have a physical location. So really helping, and you know, I joke it's kind of almost a deviation, a little bit of PR in the traditional sense, but really helping grow our website and our online presence. It's so important. And you know, we really had no website, or what we had was very bad. And you know, again, I know PR is all about getting out there, but it's so, PR is changed. It's not about just pitching press releases anymore. PR is all integrated now, and it really just covers so many different aspects of how you relate to the public. And for my specific company, my organization, the way we relate to the public is through our website and through our social media channels. So really growing and developing not only the design aspect, but also the content of our website is really just so incredibly important, and something I'm so proud of. You know, I sit back and take the credit for the website, but it was all the team. I mean, I had, you know, no idea how to take all these ideas and put them onto the web. So that was just really, I couldn't be happier with our new website that we launched this semester. And it's just such a tangible example of what this team can do.
We actually have a question from Skylar Watkins, who's one of our other directors. She wants to know what makes clients take the leap of faith with student-run agency. You have, you know, sometimes it's the resources, sometimes it's other things that are hindering you from hiring a real agency, but is there anything specific about student-run agencies that you really makes you take that leap of faith?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I do think exactly what Julie said is the enthusiasm and the energy. I'm a lot younger than I am, so I joke this is almost past my bedtime. But I think you have this team that's working for you as well, that, you know, a lot of businesses don't have access to, whether or not it's time, money, resources, et cetera, you know, because powerful PR can really create results. And a lot of times people don't, again, have all those resources. But, you know, even it's not always a money thing too. It's really just about getting a fresh new group of people. And like Julie said, the mentors that you all have access to. I mean, the BU School of Communications is world-renowned, top-notch. I mean, it's not like, you know, you guys have just such great access to so many resources. So I really do think that we're in such good hands, and, you know, it's not like we're just taking our brand that we love and put all of our heart and soul and just saying, oh, do whatever you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know the checks and balances of the PRLab, I mean, you all stay in such great communication with us, not just the account execs, but the directors, and there's mid checkpoints. So I think really once you learn a little bit about that, you're just so impressed with that. So I think the more the companies know about this, and again, I'm speaking about BU, and you know,
Right.
obviously there's many student-run organizations out there, but I do think the more checks and balances you have for the client, just the more faith that we have that, you know, there's nothing that's going to kind of go through the cracks. And if you do have a problem, let's just say, like I was talking about with kind of one person, you know, there's so many other people that you can talk to. So that's my personal experience. But I think you just have a great new group of enthusiastic students that you just, you know, are so excited to work with, who have nothing but just new, current, relevant information to share.
Mm-hmm. Julie, this is going to be kind of directed towards you in terms of, I know Brittany spoke a lot about having students as a team working with her. She's the client. I know you said you've hired some interns over the years. What are some things that PRLab students can take from, or any student-run agency student can take from that experience and then bring to a company like yours to be able to be successful in a different space?
I think and this is a good tip for students who are graduating soon, and I think what the students need to do is package your experience through PRLab as a portfolio. And that sounds cliche, but when I have interviewed PRLab folks or interns, they tell me a lot about the process, but they don't show clips. And they go, oh yeah, we didn't have any that I could show. And, you know, so remember, if you're interviewing for any agency, whether it's small or large, at the end of the day, they want to see what results you got. So, or what events you helped out. Like I've used PRLab for pretty large events, and that is experiential. That's not, you know, the goal wasn't to generate media. But so the agency would want to see that you look professional, that you handled talent, that you followed directions, that you were troubleshooters. You could say in an interview, I had a problem and I worked with the agency and you know, they gave me the task of figuring this out and I did it. And, you know, to someone who is about to supervise you at an agency, that is gold. You know, that is, they want to see that you didn't just follow directions, but you took initiative. You did some troubleshooting, you're a problem solver, you have that spark. You know, they want to see that spark. So when I've worked with PRLab, I do keep my eye out for good talent, and I do keep in touch. You know, there's a handful of great BU PRLab folks who I'm still in touch with that are either future employees, or I give them, you know, really glowing letters of recommendation and some contact names and, you know, a glowing recommendation via email. Or they can be clients of mine someday. You know, they came back to me and said, thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with you. Now we're looking for a PR firm. I landed at this company. And that's actually happened a handful of times. So it is karma. You know, I do believe that you have to want to be part of a program like PRLab, but it also comes back around in really wonderful, wonderful ways. So,
yeah, that's awesome to hear from you guys. I think that was really great advice, Julie, just about, I know we do end of semester presentations and we kind of wrap up everything that we've done for the client, and some people forget to use that when they're going to interviews, but that is really great advice to hear, that when you go to an interview, bring something like that, and it really does help make those connections in the real world.
Yeah.
We have a question on Twitter from Casey Carroll. She said, this is directed at Tori. As a student, how has your experience with PRLab differed from your internship experiences in agencies?
Okay. Well, having had both, I have to say PRLab is a lot more exciting. You get to really do hands-on work and make a difference with your client's business. In internships, you don't really get to implement new ideas. You're doing a lot of things like media lists and a lot of research. And while you will still do that in PRLab too, you do have the opportunity to make a lasting impact. And that's something I find extremely valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Amy Chandler, our great advisor, wants to know from Brittany and Julie, what she goes, I'd like to know what advice do you have for other clients who are working with student-run agencies for the first time? So I guess this might be more directed towards you, Brittany, just because you are working directly with the agency.
Yeah, and it's for the students or the client, sorry.
What advice do you have for other clients who are working with student-run agencies for the first time? This also might help in terms of business to kind of pitch from a student-run agency side to those clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. Again, understanding from the client. You know, I think by no means any expert, but I do have a decent grasp of PR, kind of being in it and working in it and stuff. So, you know, I think it's a little bit easier for me to break down my expectations or use some of the same language, I guess, in media lists, and I understand some of those, you know, terms. So I think as a new client, sometimes realizing that this might be new territory for you, and that's tough to tell someone they don't know. And again, that's a general assumption, but I've heard, you know, just from talking to other clients, that sometimes, or other students, that sometimes the clients don't always know what PR goals are. So this then kind of brings back a little bit to about the client having realistic expectations. You're not going to be on the Today Show tomorrow. You know, I mean, no, I've been trying for a really long time. No, it is. It's kind of, it's just about setting those expectations and really realizing that there are tangible goals out there that can create such wonderful results, such wonderful results. But just really making sure that you know what those are. And if you don't know what those are going in, don't be afraid as the client to reach out to the supervisor, to a Miss Amy Chandler, to say, hey, what can I really do? Or you know, to the directors and, you know, the presidents of the student-run organization, and really just help get those clear expectations, because you don't want to then go to your account supervisors with just a laundry list of stuff with get me on the Today Show and expect that to be done, because then you're just setting up everyone for failure. You're setting yourself up for failure. You're, you know, going to lower the expectations for the students because they're not giving you what you need. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to get some really clear defined goals, and, you know, really just, but also listen to students and allow them to say, and I think as a student, just to say, hey, we can't do that. We can't get you on today's show. We'll try, but just in case we don't, what's your backup plan? Again, it's kind of that clear expectation.
Yeah, and I know that we've used that in the client contracts that we send out at the beginning of every semester.
Yes.
We are a student group. You know, that is this amount per semester, and there are other options out there, but this is what we can give you in the time that we have. You know, we have very strict time constraints being in one semester and being able to do that work. So that's great for students, I think, drafting pitches to potential clients and then clients to hear as well. Julie, did you have anything to add? I know you're kind of in a different situation, but would there be anything that you had to say to other clients that might be deciding between whether to start up an agency on their own or work with a student-run agency?
Yeah, you probably don't know this, but I've actually worked with PRLab a handful of times, with me being the client. So, and as past president of PRSA Boston, a lot of folks will say, don't you use PRLab? How did that go? Was it okay? Was it not worth it? You know, what's the real deal? So I will always be honest, and I'll say, look, if you're not a teacher, if a type, you know, if you're not in the mindset that you will be spending some time teaching, don't do it, because it's not going to benefit the students. It's not going to benefit you. If you are of the mindset that these are your next generation employees and they have great ideas, they have great energy and enthusiasm, as I've said before, and you have something specific, you know, like Brittany said, a specific goal to accomplish, you know, they're unstoppable. I think, you know, they can do a really, really great job, and they're a huge asset to your team, but you have to do the work as the client. You have to be, you know, I would tell another PR firm, you have to be organized before you get on that call with them, because you can't say, well, I don't know, maybe we should just get publicity. You know, you have to be very organized and specific with your goals, like Brittany said, and be specific with your tasks. So if you need a report or you need a press release or you need a media alert, you can give them examples. You can show them what your agency's format looks like. So back to your question, when people say, what do you know, what kind of advice would you give me? I would say, make sure that you schedule time for yourself to be strategic and thoughtful about how you're working with PRLab. Otherwise, don't do it. If you're not ready to make that commitment to being a good team member. So I'm very honest with them about that, because it's obviously quicker to hire, you know, a PR firm if you're a company and you need to hire a PR firm. But I think there's some benefit in hiring PRLab as well. So they just have to know that going into it.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Thank you, Julie. That's it's really different to have, you know, a current client, a past client, just people talking about the different ways that you have assistants who's having some issues. So we have another question from another student in PRLab, and this is kind of a general question just for everyone. I know we've been talking about PR and clients, and what does PR mean to you? And I know this is going to be different for each of you, just because it's a very general question. It could go either way, but what is PR to you?
Okay. PRLab is always, I mean, PR, sorry, it's always changing, and you have to, for PR, you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to learn quickly, adjust very quickly. So that's, I guess, what it means to me.
So I guess just the situations that you're put in when you're dealing with public relations is kind of what you think about. And I think that's very telling of that you are a student and that you're always looking to please the client in terms of public relations. So Brittany, what is it?
I love this question. This is actually one of my favorite questions. It's storytelling to me. And what I love about it is, you know, PR, public relations, is the way you relate to the public, and it's the way you convey something to your target audience. And I just think it's great storytelling. And, you know, again, it's, you know, my team right now is trying to tell my target audience, which for me it's the world, but maybe it's smaller that, but it's about my organization and why I started it and what it means to me and what it does. And, you know, I think sometimes when you look, like Julie kind of was briefly mentioning earlier, we don't know, maybe I'll love the clients we work with. Sometimes it's a little, but if you think about it, that you're trying to tell a story, maybe it becomes a little bit more interesting to you. How do I tell that story that nobody's ever told before? So when you kind of look at it like that, I do. That's why I love PR, is because it's a challenge. It's a challenge to try to show, like I said, your target audience, and sometimes that's the media, sometimes that's the general public, sometimes that's a very small target audience, and sometimes it's very big. But yeah, it's just really great storytelling. And I think if you give yourself that challenge, how do I tell a great story? Even as kind of a client or a product or a brand that you were kind of a little on the fence about, it maybe become that much more exciting to you because you put yourself into that storytelling role.
Julie, thoughts?
I keep agreeing. It's hard to be behind Brittany because I'm like, what she said. I would add, now my challenge is always adding on and not repeating what you said. I love this question too. You can't be president of PRSA and not enjoy this question. I think storytelling is indeed, you know, the popular way to describe PR. And my only reservation, and I've talked about this a lot with my colleagues, having been doing this for over 20 years, is you don't want to forget that there is some art and science to PR. And I think when we talk about storytelling, I worry that it makes clients think that it's a little too squishy. You know, it's just telling my story. It's no big deal, because it is a big deal. I think a lot of agencies are trying to marry storytelling with back to business. You know, that at the end of the day, you can tell a story, but you also have to sell the widget, whatever your company does. You know, for Brittany, she wants to get donations, you know. So by telling the story, donations may come in out of benevolence, but if, you know, I don't mean to use you as an example, but I love what you do. If you have dog lovers hearing your story and then want to make a donation because they support you, that's great. But say your website is not working, or your donation button doesn't work. So that's the art and science. You have storytelling plus science and tech, you know, more specifically technology, where you have to then become well-versed in, well, why would I use Twitter? You know, who's on Twitter? What's going on with Facebook? How do I use Facebook to my advantage? That's science. That's, you know, you really have to be a savvy technician as well as storyteller to be a good PR person these days, because you can't, it's really, really hard to be successful in doing one without the other, and doing the art without the science, and vice versa. So that to me is super challenging, because it's something you guys know intuitively, but, you know, like Brittany said, when we, you know, I went to Syracuse and fairly technical school, we didn't touch social media. We didn't really know what social media is. We were arguing about email. So, you know, whether or not it was the next big thing. So I think that it's been a challenge for my generation of PR practitioners. If you ask them what is PR, they would say that it's still focused on publicity, because that's their training and that's what they know. So the challenge is now, you know, especially in groups like PRSA, we have a big social media summit coming up, and a lot of that is to help people move in the direction of being a good technician as well as storyteller. You know, what is SEO? What is that all about? You know, well, you need to learn. You need to be committed to your own professional development. So it's important.
And I'm going to follow
But
up
I love this field. I've never done anything else. So.
And I am involved with Julie. I mean, you know, I also think too, it's so funny, because you can have the best story in the world, and sometimes it just doesn't get picked up, or then you say, why is that story getting picked up? And so, like Julie said, there is a science too behind the methodology. And, you know, I mean, you know, I do agree that, you know, we want it to be, you know, I'm like, hey, I saved puppies, come on. But at the same time, that fine balance between knowing and understanding that sometimes, you know, just your strong connections, or your, you know, sometimes that science behind getting your story picked up, or the kind of the more traditional publicity route, sometimes that's a bumpy road too. You could have a great story, but it just, you know, it just doesn't always fly.
I think you need both. They don't live independently. You know, I think if you can figure out how to use Twitter to sell your product through links, even better, you know.
And I think you both just answered. We had one question on Twitter from Selena Tundi. She said, what is the best way to get a message across from the audience, or to the audience, for any PR practitioner? And I think you guys answered that both well. There is
no best way.
Yeah. You have to,
right. Yeah. It's whoever your target audience is, and how they receive, how they gather information. So I have clients that don't use Twitter because it's not appropriate for them. I have clients who can't live without Twitter. So it depends on who you're selling to, ultimately.
We actually had a question earlier. I'm just trying to see who it's from. I apologize. But I had it queued up to ask. Brittany, how do you, how do you deal with clients that might have an issue with adapting to social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram? They don't really want their brand to be so public, but they do want to get their message across. I know you guys you said you launched your website, you have a blog, so you as a client are very, you know, into social media and online, but if you've had any advice for students for dealing with clients who might not be so open to using those platforms.
Well, I think Julie actually just perfectly said it. You have to look at what your goal is, and what who is your audience, and are they on Twitter? Are they on Facebook?
Right.
You know, I kind of joked it as like, oh, well, I need to be on Instagram now because, you know, that's kind of a new thing. But you do. I mean, you have to understand what's happening. You have to understand if you're trying to be more young, more relevant with millennials, you need to get on Twitter. If you're really just if you're kind of a company or a brand that's trying to reach an older target, you know, Twitter might not be your first priority. So I think as the students, you need to present a clear case. If you really believe that that brand needs to be on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever it may be, you just have to present to them why. And then, and you also have to be savvy enough to look back and say, you know what, this client doesn't want to be on Twitter and they probably don't need to be. So it's just, you know, again, understanding your target audience and are they on Twitter? Because it is a tough sell. It's time consuming because you can't just tweet once and be relevant in Twitter. Right. That's, you know, that's a very tough social channel to run because it's so fast. It's so changing. So.
Yeah, and I know we've had, like you said, millennials are just very apt to wanting to use Snapchat, wanting to use Instagram just because it's there and because they use it, but it might not be the best for their brand. So
I have an interesting story about Twitter. So some of the people watching this know that I work for King Richard's Fair. It's a big Renaissance fair, and this will be my 4th year. And when I took over Twitter, I do lots of things, but when I took over Twitter 4 years ago, and Facebook, I decided to take on the voice of the king, because what was happening before is it was like, hey, check us out. Look how great we are. Look what we're doing. We open in 5 weeks, you know, and it felt very one-sided for an entertainment product. It should be a more interactive experience because a Renaissance fair is interactive. So I changed it all up. And now I say, you know, huzzah, subjects, it's a fine day. Should I drink mead or should I drink, you know, something else, you know, and I let them decide what I have for breakfast. And I do some really fun, engaging things because I thought about who their audience was, and it's people who like to play. They're fantasy people, you know, they come dressed in costume. So I have to be part of that persona. And so one thing I'm trying to teach people to think about is voice. You know, now social media, people talk about content, and grinding out content. And I would say, you know, if someone was reluctant to be on social media, talk to them like you would talk to them at a cocktail party. You know, if somebody asked you, what does your company do at a cocktail party, whatever you would say is what you could say on Twitter. You know, think of it as one big cocktail party. There will be people on Twitter who want to hear what you have to say. There's millions of people on Twitter.
Sorry, go ahead. Answering the questions before they come in. One of our questions from Joy Chen is, how is word of mouth marketing a useful tool for PR? So I think you just answered that almost perfectly, talking like you're at a cocktail party using.
Yeah, I think, although I belong to the Word of Mouth Marketing Association, and I learned a lot. It's definitely, I know it's an organization you guys should check out if you're interested in that brand of PR, because it really is under the marketing umbrella, word of mouth marketing, and PR definitely, you know, sort of overlaps, but it's also ambassador programs, sort of deputizing bloggers to write about your product or service or event. You know, there's a lot of, you have to go to the website and check it out because they have a lot of elements of word of mouth marketing that you would not have thought of until you go and see case studies and see they have the WOMI awards, so you can see who won. JetBlue, for example, with their ambassador program is probably one you know of the most. But they do an amazing job communicating what word of mouth marketing is. So it's WOMA, WOMMA.
Thank you. Resource.
It's a good tool.
Yeah. Do you have any experience with word of mouth marketing, or anything that you wanted to add on word of mouth?
No, I mean, I think we all know how valuable word of mouth is, and I think one of the biggest things that can happen is, I think this kind of more goes into crisis PR, is when word of mouth can be very powerful, and it can be more powerful now with social media. You know, one bad mistake, you know, you tweet the wrong thing, you're all of a sudden in a PR nightmare. So I just more think, you know, when it comes to, I know it's slightly different, but just how powerful that word of mouth can be. That, you know, you hear almost every day now a brand does a distasteful tweet, and they don't mean to. It's totally, you know, a mistake, but it does go to show how fast word of mouth can spread these days with the power of social media. So sometimes, you know, slightly different, but when I kind of hear word of mouth, I do also think how, as a brand, as a company, as people responsible for tweeting from different sides of the aspect, you do just have to, you know, kind of be careful, and like what Julie said, kind of take yourself and put yourself into the client, put yourself into who is the audience on the other end, saying, would I find this tasteful? Would I find this offensive? Would I, you know, because sometimes one wrong thing and you can have a nightmare on your hands. So.
No, absolutely. And I think we're gonna just start to wrap things up a little bit. So coming back to, I know we've been talking a lot about general PR and the aspects of PR that we use every day. So the social media, the word of mouth, this, that, and the other. And I think that what students really are itching to know are, what are the benefits of being part of a student-run agency? Are the connections that you make really advantageous to you in the real world? I don't know if, Tori, you want to answer that from being a student yourself and the connections that you've been able to make in job searching and things like that. How do you think PRLab has really helped you? And then we can turn to the clients and see what your perspective is on that.
Definitely the connections are really amazing, and being able to network not only with clients and being able to learn from them, but also I've learned so much from my peers, and being able to work in teams is such a valuable skill to have, and learn that communication early on. But you know,
yeah, absolutely. What do you have to add on that?
I mean, I would really hope so. I would hope it's a really valuable. You know, I think that the work that I've always received, so the work students have done and has always just been really impressive. So like Julie was saying, you know, I hope that the students are taking this and bringing it forward to them with their potential employers. And whether or not it's at a traditional PR agency, a marketing agency, really showing that you have the ability to take a client, put up a plan, get results, work in a team, work on your own individual projects, you know, for people like Tori and yourself, you know, to manage people, I mean, which is a skill that a lot don't have, and a lot can learn from. So really just taking what you guys are doing, and it is so important, and, you know, hopefully it's a good experience, or at least a learning experience, and you can be honest with what you learned if it wasn't always positive, but hopefully you can look at the clients, like Julie, like myself, the same thing, I've written several recommendations. I'm references for several of my past BU students. So just really hoping that, and knowing that if you give us good work, we're really going to try to help you. You know, so looking at us as kind of, you know, hopefully again, that kind of partnership that we want to see you guys succeed. We want to see you come work with us, work, you know, for us, you know, alongside of us, and be our peers and colleagues. So just, you know, knowing that if you give us good work, we really want to see you succeed and help you to our fullest.
Awesome. Julie, what do you have to add? The benefits of being in a student-run agency?
So the obvious are, you know, to improve your skills and to learn that client service, you know, those client service skills. But I actually advise students to think about, you know, sometimes thinking in the reverse. I don't want to say the negative, but in the reverse. Think about what you hate doing. You know, if the client asks you multiple times to do this task or this report, or if you hate reports with all your passion, you know, you need to think about that. You need to think about what you're excited about doing and the whole scope of what you were given, and what you really, really hate doing, because that's probably not going to change. So think about how you can take that knowledge and morph your career path to take that into consideration. So for an example, you know, I had an intern once who was so creative and so clever. She was great with words. She hated the client service part, the bureaucracy and politics and reporting. So I said, you know what, you should work for a radio station. Not that they don't have some of that, but you need to be clever a lot because you're really good at it. So to take what you love and to take what you hate and to really be honest with yourself about what about PRLab in my experience have I personally enjoyed as a student and what would I really don't want to do when I get to a job, because I think that's really valuable. Do it now before you get into the, you know, an agency job you might be miserable at. You should have worked in-house, or you should have worked for a nonprofit, or you should work for a magazine. You know, there are lots of different ways you can go in PR, and that's the beauty of our field is you can be a speechwriter. You can, you know, there's crisis, you know, there's so many things you can do. So I also give the advice that you really should try to understand the hierarchy of your client and learn the vocabulary. So understand how a client works, who's the decision maker, but who can really get the stuff done. That might be the secretary or the administrative assistant. You know, find out how the company ticks, what the culture is like. That's really valuable information, and learn the vocabulary so you're not saying, you know, I'm writing a press release when you really meant a media alert, or you don't know what an event listing is, or, you know, the basic vocabulary that you probably will learn in class but you may forget. You know, pay attention to that lingo, because when you go into an interview, you might look a little silly if you don't pay attention to that stuff. And the professionalism is, you know, I had a discussion with our PRLab team today about what to wear to an event, you know, making sure that you learn those little details that can make a big difference. That, you know, in this business, details are everything. So I hope that helps.
No, absolutely. And we just got one last tweet from Shannon Hines, who is a PRLab student. She said, PRLab at BU, she tagged us, has been such a wonderful experience. I'm so glad I joined. And I think that just the support that we've gotten from Brittany and Julie has really been great to hear. I think students are very excited to be part of the student-run agency and hear all the benefits. And, you know, like Julie said, you might not be what you want to do, but you'll figure that out here. And I'm glad Shannon's had a great experience.
And to not freak out about that, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are lots of different ways you can go in PR. It doesn't have to be an agency, or it doesn't have to be corporate. It can be, there's so many things you can do.
Absolutely.
So this is the time to learn.
Yeah. And I want to thank again all of our speakers for coming tonight. Tori for representing PRLab, Brittany and Julie for just giving us an outsider's perspective. Sometimes it's hard to look outside when you're doing work for one specific client, or you're, you know, job searching. It's hard to look at the positives and see the bright light that is ahead always. So I want to thank you guys for participating tonight. This was a really great experience. I hope we can continue in the future. So Julie, we're gonna sign off in just a few seconds, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been fun. It's been really